A deadly explosion in Syria's Idlib province has killed 8 people, including 3 children and 2 women. The blast was caused by leftover war munitions stored in a house by a scrap dealer. A child was also injured. Rescue teams recovered bodies from the rubble, but authorities fear further explosions. The incident highlights a growing crisis. Experts warn that up to 300,000 unexploded munitions remain across Syria, putting over 15 million people at risk. With farmers and children among the most frequent victims, aid groups are calling for urgent action to clear these hidden dangers. For more on this discussion, we are joined by Joyita Basu, editorial director of the Sunday Guardian, and we're also joined once again by Josh Barnes, anchor and correspondent. Josh, I was wondering, could you tell me a bit more about what's going on with this explosion that has happened from old munition in Syria?
Yes, it is an absolute disaster that has been described by authorities, but it's almost the disaster that was always going to happen. You mentioned already between 100,000 and up to 300,000 of a million explosive devices remain unexploded. And this situation that we've seen is something that could be made a regularity if we have this situation moving forward. Now, the impact is devastating. We've seen 3 children die, family members die, and the impact is huge. Of course, a scrap dealer who had these devices, the building was destroyed, and civil defence forces have been investigating. But the question remains, what can be done with so many of these devices potentially out there in Syria, potentially there to explode at any point? They're unpredictable. It takes something small potentially for these devices to explode. So it really is a case that what can be done to make sure this doesn't happen again. The situation in Syria, it's devastating. The situation is dire. The place needs rebuilding in lots of places. So to see this happen is a real gut punch for the Syrians who are finally looking forward following over a decade of civil war and then also the ousting of Bashar al-Assad.
Joyita Basu, I wanted to come to you next. What does this reveal about the after effects of such a long and oppressive regime that people are hoping for a new Syria, a new democratic Syria? What does this mean for the people there? It's such an unfortunate thing to have happened.
Well, it seems that around 100,000 to 300,000 unexploded munitions are scattered all over Syria. I mean, it says that putting at least 15 million people at risk. So this is not this is not an easy situation to handle. And I'm not even certain whether the particular government that is there, that Golani or Jolani, whatever his name is, who has declared himself to be president, whether he even has the will to take care of the situation, because Syria is not a small country. It's a very big country, and it's kind of strewn all over Syria. So, I mean, until and unless there is a serious effort, including international organizations, to find these munitions and explode them, because this is going to continue. We do not know. I mean, forget about having a normal life. Most of these people are risking death each and every day.
Joshua Barnes, I wanted to come back to you. The UN has released a report today about the situation in Syria, the states that people are living in there. What can you tell me about this?
Yes, so the large country of Syria is in a state that is requiring a lot of support according to the UN. Of course, a 14-year period of fighting. That's a civil war. That's the overthrowing of al-Assad. But we're looking at a country which its current growth would mean that if the GDP were to return to the pre-civil war levels, it would take until 2080. 55 years at the current rate of growth without geopolitical, without worldwide interjection. It's not a position the UN sees as possible. To give you another idea of the state of Syria at the moment, 9 out of 10 people are currently living in poverty. Now, with a country with as many people that are there, with a country the size that it is, the job for the new government is it's an almost impossible task. 9 out of 10, 90% living in poverty. since the war started in around 2012, the civil war that is, 618,000 people have died. So there's been death, there's been devastation economically, and this report from the UN is highlighting that, but also calling on international support. Millions within Syria have been displaced over the years of fighting. People haven't been able to set up a home, people haven't been able to set up businesses. 1 in 4 people in Syria remain unemployed. With that level of poverty, with that level of unemployment, it's going to take millions, potentially billions, just to get the country back on its feet. Now, the diplomatic efforts that have come from Sharar and his government, he has, of course, spoken about needing support from Western nations. We've seen restrictions be lifted. We've seen flights returning to Syria. But don't get it wrong, the situation in Syria, whether the war is ongoing or not, is dire. And there needs to be support from countries across the world, from organisations like the UN, to get Syria back on its feet. Now, the question remains, with all the geopolitical uncertainty that we're seeing, not just in the Middle East, but with Russia and Ukraine and the US input into that, we're also looking at the South China Sea and East Asia, where there is, of course, tension that is growing, and the untold difficulties that certain governments are facing with their own economies. The question remains, where's the money going to come from? Who's going to want to support Syria in the way that they need, so it's not 2080 until they're back on their feet?
Joyita Basu and Joshua Barnes, thank you very much for joining us.